Hello and welcome to Detective Comics. This is the themed Batman show from the Comic Crush. I'm Paul. Hello, and this is Hemen.
Hi.
As you know, the format of the show, which you should know by now, hopefully, unless you've chosen this episode to go really early, is we pick at least two themed Batman books every week, and we discuss them. But you guys get to pick which theme goes out every week. You can do that by following us on the socials. After the end of each new episode, there'll be a sort of poll, informal poll on all our socials. And you can choose which theme you want us to go with next. And that'll be the episode that goes out. We're not going to tell you which books are going to for which theme. You can have a bit of fun yourself and try and guess. We should have done some sort of competition, actually, Hemen, on guess what books are going to be in each theme, and you can win something. But maybe for season 2.
You still could.
But could we? Because the episodes won't be going out in order.
That's true. Season 2.
We'll work on this for season 2. We're going to work on the format. Do let us know what you think of the format. If you don't like it, let us know. And we'll see if we can. I mean, I suppose you just switch off if you don't like it. But you can follow us on.
That would solve so many issues online with any kind of book or TV show. If you don't like it, just stop. But no, people.
I lived for the day that I see a post on Facebook or Reddit or any of the social medias where someone goes, "Oh, I started reading this but didn't like it, so I stopped."
I had that experience of a book. I read 100 pages of a 500-page book, and I turned to my wife and I said, "If you ask me a question right now, I couldn't answer it. I can't answer anything about this, so I'm going to stop. I'm doing it. It's gone. I'm starting something else." So I'm really proud of myself for just
Sometimes you got to. Sometimes you got to. You can always go back. That's the thing. You can go back to it.
No, I've scorched earth. Done.
Anyway, to be part of the, I don't know, the fun, I guess we're calling it, you can follow us on the socials at The Comic Crush on Instagram and Threads. I am old enough now that I have to count these on my hands. Instagram and Threads at The Comic Crush. The Comic Crush on Facebook. You can find and follow the page there. And also at thecomiccrush.bsky.social for Blue Sky. Which is our kind of preferred social media platform, if you like. So you do follow us, and you can see which themes are coming next. We'll put them up at the end of the episode, and you guys can pick which theme, and the one that gets the most votes will be the one that we go with for the next week. So it's only the first episode and the very last one, which are set in stone for various reasons, but you guys can pick the episode. This week we are doing the theme of the episode is Batman the Animated Comics. I've just literally banged on about the themes and then forgot to do the theme. Batman the Animated Comics. So we've picked two books that are in an animated style, not entirely dissimilar to Batman the Animated Series. The first of those books will be Blades. Now, Blades was a 3-issue series, 1, 2, 3, there you go, running from Legends of the Dark Knight numbers 32 to 34. It was written by James Robinson, I'm sure that a lot of you know, and drawn by Tim Sale. It's very early Tim Sale work. And to be honest, I kind of missed this the first time round because I was still buying my comics at my local newsagent. This was back in the glory days when you could walk into a corner shop newsagent and they would have American comics there, sometimes with the annoying British price sticker on.
Yeah.
But you could literally buy American comics from your newsagent. Something that I think has the loss of which has harmed the American comics industry in the UK to no end. I think if they started doing that again, it would bring comics to so many more people. But yeah, so this would have been on the shelf at your local news agents in about 1993, I think it was. I can't tell the.
I would have been 10.
I would have been. Oh God, how old would I have been? Let's have a look. When was it out? January 92. There you go.
Okay,
so you'd have been even younger, 8.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
We don't have too many images to show you from this one because I tried to get decent stills for this, but I couldn't. If you are listening to us on Spotify or Apple rather than looking at the YouTube video, you can head over to thecomiccrush.com and find the page that this podcast is on, and there will be a gallery of images for you, so you can have a look. But there won't be too many for Blades because I just couldn't get decent JPEGs. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this one? I couldn't see this in print. I don't know if it's part of a collection I missed. This was a sort of DC Infinite jobby.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I'm more and more impressed with that app as I use it because this stuff is there.
Yeah, there's a deep catalogue of stuff by all accounts, and I think DC in the next couple of years are very much going to be about releasing some deep catalogue stuff. I think they've listened to the audience, and the audience does really want deep catalogue stuff. Yeah. And also, I think comic publishers now are at a point where they probably can't afford not to, because there's a lot of stuff they seem to keep, and then every 5 to 10 years you'll get a new edition of it. And then there's some stuff they'll bring out every few years or every couple of years. But I think at the moment they can't afford not to be bringing out some of this deep catalogue stuff. You know, DC have got DC Finest, which purports to be all the way from the 30s all the way up to 2011. And I am so excited for that. I'm hoping that some of the Legends of the Dark Knight will get there. There is, I think, about 70%, maybe 80% of Legends of the Dark Knight remains uncollected.
Oh, okay.
James Robinson, just on his own, should have a Legends of the Dark Knight by James Robinson book, because he's done a ton of these. Okay. I think he did about 8 or 10, maybe even more Legends of the Dark Knight stories. Sometimes they get collected by artists, as with this one. So I reread this in Tales of the Batman by Tim Sale. Sorry, that's a flop for you guys, but which was a paperback collection that I think came out. I mean, mine's an old library copy that I brought secondhand. So this came out in like 2007, and this contains a lot of early Tim Sale DC stuff, which had previously not been collected. So it's got a story from Shadow of the Bat there. It's got some stuff from Showcase 90. I want to say 93, which I think was among his earliest DC work. And you can see a style developing. So the story of this is Batman is tracking a killer called Mr. Lime, who seems to be assassinating elderly people with no rhyme or reason. He's just killing elderly people. And he's proved to be completely untraceable. And at the same time, a new vigilante arrives in Gotham, calling himself the Cavalier. And that really is it. Like it's just that simple. It becomes slightly more complex as we go on. Hemen, I assume this was your first time reading this.
It was the first time reading it. And essentially, I was suddenly taken aback by, because I think Mr. Lime, I can't remember if it's stated or if Batman just theorizes that the killer is killing people due to overpopulation. He's targeting the over 65s. But I was like, blimey, this is dark, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's in like page 3 or 4.
And then you realised it was British governmental policy.
But the other thing is, so you're saying this was early Tim Sale. Like my first instinct, as soon as I saw it, like I knew who it was just from he's so distinctive, and it was like yeah, he's just brilliant. He's one of those artists that even if the stories are merely fine, I have bought books on the basis of he has drawn that in like oversized format because I just want their art. You know, it's absolutely wonderful stuff.
And I think he does, again, it's the animated style we're looking at here, which is a kind of slightly less realism based and slightly more, I don't know if expressionist is the right word, but it's slightly more dynamic. It's not like looking at Bolland, where Bolland goes for a kind of quasi-realism. Alex Ross goes for a quasi-realism. I'm not going to say photoreal because I don't think it is that. This lets you know you are reading a comic.
Yeah,
straight away. They're not static images. And he's got a very Mignola-esque use of blacks and reds, and both of these, Ego and we're going to do Ego next because that way. But both of these books that we've chosen today do rely heavily on the tropes of film noir.
Yes.
However, Blades also pulls from the swashbuckling trope of cinema as well, and that's very key to this comic because
I was going to say Cavalier is essentially just Zorro, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, Batman does reference as well, just in case you haven't picked that up. But
yeah, well, for the uninitiated, for just in case you are out there and you don't know the connections between Batman and Zorro, yes, they are effectively a similar character. They both have, underground caves. They're both very rich playboys in their real life. I would say Zorro is closer to kind of working in the interests of the oppressed lower classes that Bruce Wayne is, although Bruce Wayne's done his fair share. But also, The Mark of Zorro is the film that Bruce's parents take him to see on the fateful night they get murdered in Crime Alley. And I think this is why Robinson allows Bruce to kind of be okay with the Cavalier showing up.
Yeah. I was definitely because it has a few pages sort of setting up that Batman has become obsessed with this case with this Mr. Lime, and I read I see that name Mr. Lime and my brain's ticking like is that someone I've come across? I couldn't place it, so I moved on. But he's just absolutely obsessed with a serial killer. He's neglecting his duties, like his normal day-to-day, because it's just, I must stop this guy. And I think there's like a few panels where you kind of explain why, where he's interviewing the families and like all the families are distressed and it's almost sort of triggering his memories of, well, I lost my family. So you got that connotation. And then suddenly, the Cavalier is on the scene doing the day-to-day stuff. And he's like, well, this guy looks like Zorro. He seems to be all right. I'm going to give you a chance because I've got something serious to take care of.
Yeah.
And that's kind of leaves it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And also I think that it is, as you say, what Mr. Lime is doing is assassinating, is killing he's not killing he's killing people who are parents, and I think that's key for Bruce, is that he's kind of that's really hammering it home. So it very much is a story about the trauma that drove Bruce to become Batman. This is, it's not the first and last time you see this in Batman stories. It's been played on quite a lot. It's interesting that we have, the Cavalier is also a character, funnily enough, who we see again in a different form I believe, in Morrison's Batman run when we do the International Club of Heroes.
I was when I was reading it, I was trying to rack my brain of wait, do we see him again?
And, but it's not him. It's like the French Batman, and also I think you first see the Cavalier way back in the 50s in the Batman of Many Nations, which I think, or Other Nations, I think it's called, which is one of the stories you'll find in like the Black Casebook collection, which is the stuff that inspired Morrison to do his Batman run. Okay. So that in itself has another layer of resonance for the kind of meta level of Batman. I kind of like this one. I don't think it's top tier Robinson, who's an amazing writer. I mean, his run on Starman, which I haven't read but do own, is apparently staggering. Like, apparently it's one of the best comics ever written. And he kind of seemed to fall not out of favor, but he sort of disappeared for a while, and he came back with Airboy. I don't know if you read his version of Airboy,
no.
Which became staggeringly controversial, and I think incorrectly controversial, because I think in that people were, because there's a moment in it where one of the characters ends up having sex with a trans female, and he's kind of disgusted to find that it's a guy. And it's like, yes, that is problematic by and of itself.
When was this written?
Oh God, it's actually fairly recent. So it's in the
okay.
Yeah, it's not old.
Oh, okay.
But
we're talking sort of Ace Ventura 1 sort of level.
No. I mean, the problem I had with it is that it's conflating the thoughts of the characters with the thoughts of the writer. Yes, the writer puts the stuff there, but that's not necessarily saying that that's how the writer would feel. I would have to go back and reread it to see how I feel about it now. I mean, I personally dislike. I think picking on trans people is a fucking really bullshit low bar. I just think it's a fucking waste of time, and it's just don't be shitty to people. Don't be fucking shitty to people, especially if they're a small percentage of the population. Like, don't fucking do it.
I am eager.
However,
who the next punching bag is.
Yeah.
Basically, because there's always someone.
Yeah, there's always going to be someone. Yeah. And it really aggravates me. I'm not sure how I felt about it in this. And I'm not sure he was trying to attack trans people, but I'm not a trans person. So it's not really for me to say. But I think a lot of readers conflated his feelings with the feelings of the character. And also, I think what we have to remember is sometimes the characters have to be shitty. They have to be bad people.
Sure.
In order for the drama to work. But
I kind of wish I had read this book so I could help you here. But I'm I'm finding out like a trauma and drama secondhand.
But anyway, that was James Robinson kind of coming back into comics and then then back out, and I think he's since come back in. But Robinson as a writer, he's a very good writer.
Okay.
I think he does what, in terms of his text and his writing, he does what Tim Sale and people like Chris Samney and Javier Rodriguez do really well, and Marcus Martin do really well, which is the nostalgia style.
Right.
So you feel like the book is coming to you from another age, even though it was written, 10 years ago or now or last week or whatever. And I think he does that quite quite well. And I feel I don't know where this comes in terms of his writing career. And I'd love to see more from James Robinson because he is an excellent writer. But I'm not sure where this comes in terms of his writing career. But he does a good job with this. And it's got quite a measured, strange pace to it, I found.
It does, yeah. It's, it's not... When you say, oh, it's a Tim Sale book, I expect it to be some kind of, not event, but, this big opus. And this is just a free issue. It's quite perfunctory, but it's got some really interesting ideas. And I thought there was a few moments in both this and the next book which I thought that they were almost talking directly to us and some of the things we've sort of questioned about Batman. In terms of reading, which I thought was interesting. I wrote down a bit of dialogue actually, which I quite enjoyed.
Yeah, go for it.
From this beginning section. One was, I don't think this is dialogue, this is paraphrase, but I like how it's part of Batman's reasoning is that the public seem to like him, his charm, swagger, and that he's less intense than the shadowy Batman. And it's almost like, so again, presumably these are early day Batman. It's an early day Batman story. You never sort of get that framing. You have to piece that together. But I like that Bruce has these sort of self doubts of like, why am I doing this? Am I projecting the wrong image? And he kind of gets seduced by the Cavalier the same way Gotham is. He doesn't want to admit that, but you can definitely see like, I mean, this is Batman. This is his city, and he's saying, yeah, go on then. Go on, you protect it.
And also, I think you could retroactively say this puts the kind of notion of a brightly coloured assistant in his head, and then you can run the line from this to Robin.
Well, because there is that bit of dialogue. He says, all he needs to do is slash a Z on the wall, and I'm a kid again. And I thought that was really sweet because that's a bit of vulnerability in Bruce of just sort of admitting this colourful uniform is pulling at the heartstrings of our dark, intense Dark Knight. Bruce's this whole story is just about Bruce being influenced by his emotions, like him getting obsessed with a killer because he can see the parallels with lost families that he suffered. He's letting off this Zorro impersonator because, again, it's taking him back to being a child. And I find that stuff fascinating because if you pick up Batman now, like a modern issue would kind of depict him as almost either an unstoppable Batman or he's going through some mental crisis, and that's the only, or something's influenced him. And doesn't seem to be anything in between on like a mainline Batman book. And that's not aimed at any particular writer. That just feels like his only flaws are because he cares too much or something, and he's become too intense. So
there's a lot of that, especially noticed in a few books we've read recently. That is the thing. The obsession is the problem, and he kind of wears himself down, and that's something that other writers use later on. I mean, it's a major part of Nightfall. Bane wins because he, over a number of weeks prior to him, doing him in, he wears him down. And that also is part of the kind of humanizing of the Batman, and also that in itself is a weakness in a way. Not that he is human or has humanity, but that if people stop thinking of him as a myth, they then see him as someone they can target. And I think that's a kind of interesting weakness. And in later Batman stories, there is a kind of thing subtly made of the fact that they reset that so that people think he's not really real. And there's a very, very big thing in a excellent crossover called War Games, where he's revealed quite publicly to be real, and that is a big deal. But But I kind of like that idea that he's a myth or he's not real.
I can't remember if it was in this comic or it was definitely a Batman thing I'd read recently where someone references, "Oh, you are real.
Yeah,
I've heard about you." It might have been in this actually, but it's definitely something I've read in the last week where someone sees Batman and they make a comment of, okay.
I kind of quite like it. I like that sort of, spectral thing.
Yeah.
And I guess the filmic equivalent that you see in movies is not putting him into costume for long periods of the film, and that's how you do it there. But here he's kind of very much a presence, and I like the fact that it is although he spends a great deal of time in costume and being Batman, it is actually kind of a Bruce Wayne story. Because you could easily look at the Cavalier and go, oh yeah, that's Bruce Wayne. It is a Batman equivalent. One of the titles I considered for this episode, in fact, was Batman versus Batman.
Okay.
But instead,
no, that's probably more fitting. Actually, yeah, maybe you could put that in.
Probably, yeah. We've got the title. We've got it.
But I love after this meeting, I love that they don't even give it any space, and it's almost like the next page turn is your first red flag, and your heart is like, oh man, he's too good to be true, baby, because you're given the reveal that this is just like an elaborate ruse to gain fame. He's a stuntman.
Yeah.
And his whole idea is to do a summer of vigilante capers and then unveil himself as, hey, I should be leading movies. Which is quite bold, right?
And again, that's the thing that makes the difference, is that it's the obsession that's the thing.
Yeah.
With Batman, he's doing it for an obsessive reason, but
he
it's
didn't
an
choose
important
the Batman
reason.
life. Batman chose him.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
But there is a great line which I think there's a repetition, I guess, in the monologue of the Cavalier. It's like he's enjoying, that was his plan to step up from stuntman to leading man. But he's quite enjoying the vigilante life. So how am I going to get this up? So that's quite interesting in your first instance.
Even within that, he finds a second kind of identity. Can we go ahead and spoil it, do you think?
Yeah. Go for it.
So there's also a series, a third case happening in this where sort of highline jewel robberies are happening. And that's revealed to be the work of the Cavalier. Not because, again, he's chosen, but because he finds his obsession. And that's what was interesting to me. He finds his obsession, and his obsession is this woman he's fallen in love with.
Yeah. And
that we won't say how, because if you have never read it, you should be able to kind of go out and find it.
If you haven't read it, I think just pause now, go track it down, 3 issues, and then come back.
It is just 3 issues.
The woman he falls in love with, that for me was a second red flag, because in the moment of which he meets her, that shouldn't be the moment where you're saying, oh, I'm in love with her. Like this guy, you're right, he has found an obsession. I'm not sure it's healthy.
And and also, like, the thing is, it's that very much mirrors Bruce Wayne as well, because as we've discussed on other episodes, which you may or may not have seen yet, folks, that's the roulette nature of the way we're doing this. As we've discussed in other episodes, Bruce cannot keep a woman, and sometimes he can't keep a woman alive, and it's not always his fault. He attracts some very shady people, and I think that's kind of the moment where he becomes the most like Bruce, is that he meets this woman. Bruce falls in love very easily. He's a bit of a
I
tart.
guess so, yeah. I guess it's one of the Hollywood tropes sort of carried over to comics. Comics, isn't it? Like, love is very, very quick.
Yeah. I think it's got to happen. There's times when it's given time. I mean, I think in Bruce Wayne Murderer and the issues leading up to that, Ed Brubaker brought in Vesper Fairchild. He becomes extremely critical to the plot and indeed to Bruce's life. Spoilers, but she don't make it either. But this feels like a very slight Batman story. If you get it in this edition, it's packed with a bunch of other stuff. So it's Tim Sale's, I think, first Bat work, and in fact, it might have even been his first DC work, which was a story called Men Across the Water from the Showcase 93, I think. It would have been Showcase 92. Oh God, I don't know. So it's not his first work. It came after Blade, so it was Showcase 94. And it also contains a Shadow of the Bat story called The Misfits, which I've read once but don't really remember, and a Batman black and white story that I think probably appeared in Solo or one of the other Bat books. But there's great stuff in it, and I really wish DC would republish this and update. And give us a larger edition that shows off that artwork on really decent paper, because this is on shitty glossy paper. And a lot of these comics were published in the pre-glossy age, when they still had the quite textured newsprint style paper. And I really wish they would kind of republish this somehow. You don't ever get it in any of the Tim Sale, Jeff Loeb books, because Jeff Loeb didn't write any of these. These are all stories written by other people, including Darwyn Cooke, who does the next book. But it's worth trying to track down if you can, or if you can just track down those 3 issues. I think the last time I sold them, they were about a tenner for those 3 issues. So it'll probably be even cheaper now. Every issue of Legends of Dark Knight is worth tracking down. Some are only curios. They're not amazing pieces of work, but some of them are genuinely staggering pieces of work. And the ones that kind of get showcased the most, Hemen, which has been unavailable for years. Grant Morrison's Batman Gothic, which gets brought out every few years. I don't necessarily think they are the best ones in the Legends of the Dark Knight.
But it's Grant Morrison.
Yeah, of course it's Grant Morrison, so it's good. That's one we'll have to do for season 2, I think. We could do an entire series on Legends of Dark Knight quite easily, quite comfortably. But Legends of Dark Knight is worth checking out. I don't have much more to say on it, really. It's a good, interesting little.
Yeah, I had a few, without doing spoilers, I had a few things that I really enjoyed.
Go for it, yeah.
I won't reveal who Mr. Locke is, but it was getting to a point in the story where, I understand how media works. I know how 3-act stories work, and I'm thinking we haven't been introduced to the killer yet, and I'm worrying that there's going to be someone. And that wouldn't make sense. And that would really make me annoyed. I quite enjoyed the reveal, and what it was, and what that says about Batman's obsession, because he's convinced it's a criminal genius, like the level of Riddler or Joker or something, and the actual reveal is something else. And I think he does feel quite weird. He's connected, and it takes him to slow down, because he suffers a concussion, I think, in a little Batcopter fight with the Cavalier. I'm pretty sure it's concussion, because he's convulsing, and he's like, oh, why am I so weak? And it's like, mate, you've got concussion. You should
Yeah.
know by now. But but yeah, it's in that moment where he actually slows down and gets into bed that he actually puts it together of, oh wait, that's the killer. And I quite enjoyed that element of it.
I think there's some great stuff like that where he's kind of solving cases on the discrete channel, you know, on the back matter, rather than kind of giving him his full attention. But I kind of just I like it because it's a fun little story. It's not like, I don't think it's major work. What else kind of struck you in it? I'm curious.
Yeah, there's a few other things. I think I'm just going to have to put a spoiler warning here because I can't really discuss it without spoilers. So, so again, go read it and then come back to me. But so in that copter scuffle, Batman actually could have died from the fire, but Cavalier drags him out. He saves him in a classic Batman move of saving your adversary. And he says to him, I could have killed you if I was a killer, but I'm not. He walks on. That helps Bruce's breakthrough. I then like that you find out why Cavalier is stealing jewels, because as we know, his plan was to become a movie star. It wasn't to become a jewel thief.
No.
So that reveal is quite weird. But then you find out why, and it causes him to cross the line and become a killer himself. And I love that it was this kind of, he liked it, the same way he liked being a vigilante, he liked being a jewel thief. He suddenly takes to this. And then he meets with Bruce on a rooftop and he says, look, this is what I've done. And I know even though I saved your life, you're not going to let me off because you're Batman, there's no leniency with the Batman. And so they have a fight. He doesn't know that Bruce is still concussed. He pretty much beats Batman in this sword duel. And the only thing I'm disappointed about the sword duel is that Batman didn't take off his cape and cowl. I'm a big fan of the bare-chested Batman with the cowl. I love that visual. I think it's usually him and Ra's al Ghul have that kind of fight. But I'm a big fan of bare-chested Bruce with a sword and his cowl.
Well, I think that was invented by Neil Adams for that kind of Neil Adams, and I can't remember who the writer was. But yeah, the hairy chested Batman.
If he has a sword, I want him bare chested. It's just how I'm built. But then I'm sitting there. I love the sort of the discussion they have. I love that he kind of warns Batman that you could easily slide into this. You could become a killer as well if you cross that line. And I'm not sure if he does take it to heart, but he definitely does reverberate in Bruce's head after this event. Like, again, it's another one of his fears, and it's another thing of, that's just in his mind of things to avoid because he's getting obsessed with crime. And will he cross that line and become a killer? Because he's just seen, basically his childhood hero, Zorro, become what he hates and stuff. And I'm thinking, I'm really enjoying this character. Was he the one in the Grant Morrison run? Was he one of the Batman International? I'd like to see the Cavalier again. And then he literally walks out into a hail of bullets with the police because he arms himself.
Suicide by cop.
And I'm literally thinking, it'd be great to see this guy again. It's for such a for such a relatively perfunctory, simple 3-issue story, I quite enjoyed it, and I thought it had some interesting things to say, and I was interested to see this guy again. And I guess unless there's some weird retcon, I mean, maybe he is about, but I presume that's it.
No. As I said, the version of the Cavalier that you get later is the other Cavalier.
Okay.
And I think this probably was an attempt to kind of retcon the Cavalier character.
Right.
We'll probably learn, actually, that we're completely misremembering the Grant Morrison stuff, and it wasn't the Cavalier at all.
It was maybe was it a Matador?
No, there is a Matador as well, but I think.
There's too many volumes of his run for me to find it, but
Yeah.
I can't even remember. Was it? Because there was
it's quite early in the run. Yeah, the International Club of Heroes is quite early.
That's right. That might be early on actually.
I mean, I think it serves to be a useful mirror for Batman, and I quite like that, because some of the best stories are that, and in fact the story we'll get to next is very much the mirror of the Batman, if you like. But definitely worth tracking down if you get the chance. There's some great Tim Sale work, some good James Robinson work. I feel like it kind of has that sort of loose, cartoony style. As I said, that lets you know you're looking at a comic, and I quite like that with comics, when they're not pushing for some sort of uber realism. You're kind of going to get, you've paid your $4 for a comic, and that's what you're going to get. Do you want to move on to Batman Ego?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Cool. Before we do, though, I do just have to remind you that there are 1,000 Batman stories out there, and you can get just some of them in the Comic Crush web store, which the link will be down there. There is a dedicated Batman store, back issues of varying conditions. I do my best to scan in every cover so you can actually have a proper look at what you're buying before you buy it. But do take a look there. Free delivery for orders over £10 in the UK. For international delivery, please email me and we'll see if we can work something out for you. But yeah, do check those out. Batman Ego. Right. So this is Darwyn Cooke, the great Darwyn Cooke, the late great Darwyn Cooke. Sadly, we lost Darwyn a few years ago. Darwyn Cooke is responsible for my all-time favourite. It's interesting because Darwyn Cooke looks like a character from Parker. And I say that with all the love in the world. I mean, I absolutely adore Darwyn Cooke's work, and he did my favourite comic of all time, Batman, the New Frontier, DC New Frontier, which is probably one of the greatest things I've ever read in my life. And I absolutely adore it as a comic. It's probably my favourite one. So this was initially published as a prestige format one-shot. I've got a feeling it was the early 2000s, I want to say. This collection first came out in 2007. I think I picked up one of the later editions. There is just about to be, I mean, it'll probably be out by the time we do this. There is just about to be another edition of this, I believe. This version is worth picking up because it contains a ton of other Darwyn Cooke Batman and Batman related material. I mean, first of all, the cover for the original prestige format is fucking amazing. Look at that. So
I mean, it's an interesting play on, because if I remember my Wikipedia searching correctly, so this book started, or at least the beginning pages started as he sent it to DC Comics as his pitch. They ignored him. He sent it, amongst other work, to, I guess, Bruce Timm.
Right.
There was a job on the animated series, and he became a storyboard artist. And he did a few episodes of the animated series. And this looks like torn out of the animated series, but then twisted into something else. This is absolutely, this is wild. This hits certain nostalgia, but for someone who I probably, so in the UK, I can't remember what it was. It was on ITV. you'd have this 22-minute Batman animated series literally split into 3 parts, so maybe 6 minutes apiece, and it was spread across a 3-hour nonsense show, probably hosted by Ant and Dec, even then. And you had to literally just sit there waiting to get another 6 minutes of Batman.
So I have a confession to make here, which I've made before, and this is long-time listeners of any of my podcasts will think, why hasn't this idiot done this yet? I still have not watched more than about 1 or 2 episodes of Batman the Animated Series.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, I know. Like the episode I watched was brilliant. But
I think I bought it on like iTunes or something, and my wife was saying, "Why have you bought this? You're never going to watch 200 episodes." I put some random episodes on, and she sat there sort of transfixed with, "This is really good." I'm like, "Yeah, I know," but it genuinely isn't just nostalgia. It is great, and maybe we should at some point in a further season, maybe we watch Batman in other media, and we force you to sit down and watch. We should do that.
We should definitely do that. I would love that to be sort of season 3 or 4, provided people watch this season, of course.
So there you are, people. If you've been campaigning to get Paul to watch the animated series, make this a success, and we'll get there.
We could do a rewatch of that could be a season in itself, a rewatch of the entire animated series.
Well, you could just start with, I guess, Mask of the Phantasm. I think you'd enjoy that.
That I've seen. Sorry, I have seen. Yeah. But like, I mean, just look at this thing. It's absolutely gorgeous. Let's bring this up. That's the opening page, and the cinematic kind of prowess on display there is just staggering. Pulling back from the you are now leaving Gotham sign, and then back into the kind of super close up of the eye, and then moving on to one of my all-time favorite double page spreads. I mean,
yeah. I mean, if you didn't know he was a storyboarder, had done storyboarding, it makes complete sense, because it is so cinematic. It's just wonderful. And I found that I've been reading the Parker books that he did. There's some glorious editions out there, and those just feel like if you were going to try again to make a movie, you would just use his books and just film what is on the page, because brilliant.
They're absolutely amazing, and one of the things that I'm completely gutted about with his passing is that we now will probably never get those books. Although, interestingly enough, I think there's probably a couple of contenders who would match his work. I suppose loosely you could say Michael Allred, although I think Allred's style is too rooted in a kind of 50s a go-go, kind of pop style. Or there's Amanda Connor, who writes the forward to this book, and she talks about being told, this animation style you're doing isn't going to work for comics, come back with something better. And then Darwyn Cooke comes up with, this animation style, and then that starts to usher in other kind of work. I think, as we talked about in Blades, you can put his work on a sort of weird sliding scale, not of quality, but with people like Chris Samney, Mike Mignola, who all use very strong contrasty images. And as we get deeper into this, we get into more kind of very intoxicating, bright, almost lurid colours, greens and reds and things like that. Just got to find some more.
I was going to say that double page spread you had before. So obviously that's Joker trying to poison the water supply, isn't it?
Right.
I was wondering, when you see Joker poisoning the water supply, do we think this is like a one singular event that writers are returning to? Or is this something Joker tries a lot? Because
I don't know, actually.
there's a lot of humor in
good...
repetition. There's a lot of humor in repetition. Is this like his Thursday usual? Like every Thursday he tries to poison Gotham water supply? Or do you think it's this singular event that got foiled, but it's something that writers, if they want to establish this is early days Batman, they return to?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I'd be interested to know what the viewers think of this. So, guys, do leave a comment in the comment section below on the video, or on any of the socials, or on Apple, or on Spotify. Like, do drop us a comment and let us know what you think about is Batman. Is the Joker poisoning the water supply a singular event or a repetitious event? I don't know.
Because if it's repetitious, it's sort of suggesting he's got more of a Stuart Lee style sense of humor. Just keep doing it until it's funny. I'm not sure I'm ready for the Joker to be delivering things like Stuart Lee, but
Stuart Lee, who has actually featured in quite a few comics.
But I'm putting it out there that because I honestly can't decide, because either way it's quite funny, which is quite in tune with the Joker. So yeah, I can't decide if this is supposed to be, well, this is an early event, so let's pick some like a fixed point in time, I guess, and go for that. Or do we think that Joker just constantly is trying to poison the water supply? Because
I don't know. I like to think of it as this one event, actually, this one major event. Because usually I feel that Joker's crimes have the benefit of being different every time. But what the real fascinating crime in this is the one that opens the book, which is he's trying to. So this criminal has ripped the Joker off and taken the money he was given not to the city paid the ransom for him not to poison the water supply. Batman's caught the Joker, but the guy who's ripped the Joker off, he's on the run, and Batman catches up with him on the bridge heading out of Gotham and saves him from killing himself, which I'd completely forgotten about from the other times I've read.
It's such a great line as well. It's like, first you dangle me from a bridge, now you save me, make up your mind, fruitcake.
Yeah, I really love that. And also, but the shock of it is he finds out that the guy knows that the Joker will come after not only him, but his family.
Yeah.
So he's murdered his own family. And this is something that Batman feels completely responsible for. And it's awful. It's absolutely awful.
Well, yeah, because those panels are funny because it's like, I think he says something like, "Oh, Buster's gratitude warms my heart." Yeah. And you have that little thing, and then it takes a turn. And it's just, sure, Joker's locked up, but I mean, let's face it, he's going to escape. So I had to kill my family before he does.
Which says a lot about the revolving door of Arkham. And I also like how further into the book. Sorry, I keep glancing down at the.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just there we go. We've got some here. But further into the book, you get flashbacks of people like Hugo Strange. Did you get who that was?
I was going to ask if that was Hugo Strange. Yeah, I recognize everyone else. It's like if it's someone has got glasses, it's probably Hugo Strange, right?
If glasses, bald head, and the little beard, then definitely.
Okay.
And also,
who I accidentally referred to as Doctor Strange, which isn't wrong because he's Doctor.
Yeah, he is a doctor. Yeah.
When I was watching something with my wife, he made a cameo, and I said, "Oh, it's Doctor Strange," and she just looked at me like, "What? What? No, but what? Benedict Cumberbatch? No, that's not what." And it took me a while to untangle that. So yeah, don't make that mistake.
So, like, Bruce making it home after being stabbed, which is not unlike his origin, really. He then, of course, encounters this kind of supernatural form of the Batman that seems to be an entirely separate personality. the ego, the id, if you like.
Well, I guess I think just before this, in that sort of Hugo Strange framing, I think he's sort of suggesting the idea that Batman is schizophrenic, or he has distinct personalities. It's planting that seed in there, so it's not a complete shock, I guess, when
it is a thing that kind of gets leveled at the Batman quite a lot. And that there's been great kind of hay made with this idea that he tries to split, kill Bruce Wayne and just be the Batman. It's the central tenet of Devin Grayson's amazing Gotham Knights run, which kicked off the Gotham Knights series, which is definitely worth tracking down. It's the central tenet in the current book by Raphael Grampa, which I can't remember the name of now, but the brilliant Gargoyle of Gotham, I think it's called, and a book which I've not read yet, because obviously it remains, as of this date, we're recording this at the beginning of June, and has been running for 2 years, and we've got 3 issues out of it, and still waiting for the final one. I like anyway. It's a central tenet of that. So I'm being mean. Good quality comics take a long time, but God, I love this book.
I do sometimes wish that it's really interesting. You kind of wish that they would wait for the artist to finish before starting sometimes, because as good as Aliens and Avengers is, it's driving me mad for a 4-issue comic.
Is that still not finished?
No, maybe next week. I don't know. Like, honestly, it's great fun, but it's a throwaway fun comic. The art is incredible, but having to wait 2-3 months per issue is like, I know they were rushing to tie it in with Romulus, but surely this is not helping. Just publishing.
Are you sure it's not down to Hickman writing Imperial and things like that? And
but I mean, what was your first thought though when you saw the big bat face on the computer? Like, what was your first?
I see. Here's a weird thing with this story, and I don't feel I can properly address this without skipping to the end. Simon Pegg style, skip to the end. Because I was expecting at any moment this would be revealed as some sort of fever dream, and it kind of, they never address what this is. This bat figure just appears, and unless I'm mistaken and I've just misread it.
No, you're right. It's not like he's, in the other story he had concussion and what have you. It's not really. He hasn't been hit with Joker gas. This is Batman having it out with himself in the Batcave alone.
Yeah.
But I think it's fascinating because I guess having read, I can't pronounce it. I've never said it out loud. I've only read it on a page. But the Purple Batman was his name, Zaranul.
Zurinar, yeah.
Zurinar. Having read that kind of thing, my first instinct was, oh, are we doing that kind of thing? But that's not. I don't think it is that psyche, although the genesis of that psyche seems to be suggested here. Because Batman does offer him that choice of, hey, you should just let me take charge and I'll do what needs to be done. And Batman says something like, wait, are you suggesting I create a backup personality? That's mad.
And I think this was done in the knowledge. I mean, well, actually, it wouldn't have been. So 2007, I think. Where were we still? Oh, actually, yeah, we would have been into Morrison's run in 2007.
That would have just been the genesis of this might have been far before it was actually published, because the first X amount of pages, or what became this, was sent as a pitch to DC once upon a time. So it is really hard to sort of nail what he did or didn't know about the continuity.
And I think it's fascinating for that. Although he does say no, like he won't create another personality that allows the Batman to be more vicious and more kind of monstrous.
Oh, sorry, no, there is a possible reason, because I put it in my notes as another reason that Batman is such a badass. Even during a mental break, Batman is able to identify maybe that's what's happening.
Yeah.
You know, but there's a hint that he might be suffering from blood loss from the events earlier in the night. So you're given that small out of this might actually be a something to do with that, if an injury is picked up.
Yeah. I like the fact that they don't actually 100% say it's almost like a kind of which I know they have done with Batman. It's almost kind of like a Christmas Carol.
Yeah, it definitely had those vibes, didn't it? Especially when you sort of go on those. There's a childhood flashback where I think Thomas Wayne, almost Team America style, promises Bruce he will never die. Well, they won't die for a long time, and it's like the ultimate betrayal, because obviously, we know they're not that long for this world.
And well, in fact, the flashback takes place at Christmas, just when Bruce's mother is given the infamous pearls.
Of course, yeah.
And Bruce is given a Zorro action figure, and we're kind of then, into that thing of, which does get played with a lot.
Yeah, doesn't the Batman or the ego of Batman, I'm not sure what to call it actually, but this Batman personality even suggests that I lived within you before you even had a name for me. And he points to the Zorro figure, and I think Bruce tries to contest with that, saying, no, I sculpted you into what I needed.
Yeah. And it's I don't know where I come down on that, really.
I don't think Bruce knows, and I think that's the point. Personally, from reading that, I think that's what Darwyn's point is, that Bruce doesn't know what this construct is. Was it always within him? Has it been caused by trauma? Or has he just taken... There's a line like, my name is fear and I live within you. Has he just taken all of his fears and put that outside to scare criminals and what have you?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing, and really it comes about, what does he want Batman to be for people? Because he's not warm and cuddly.
I think another thing I guess I thought was that this book was maybe about his guilt and how he channels it. Obviously not in a healthy way.
To a certain degree, I think you're on to something there, because he does say, I can live with the responsibility of what happens as a result of my actions, if you can live with the fact that I want to be a symbol of hope, not a not a monster. And then that is fascinating.
Yeah, I thought that in particular was, I think that's like two panels, isn't it? Like one is criminal scared, and the other, I think, is a woman, almost like a sort of angelic kind of thing of, oh, Batman. And I love that, because that for me almost stopped all of our discussions on Batman's no kill rule. Like that's almost the argument that makes the complete sense of, I want to be the bastion of hope. I want people to look up to me and feel hope, rather than I only want the bad people to fear me. Yeah.
But the byproduct of being a fearful creature is everyone's going to be afraid of you. And I kind of think what's interesting about it is that when you look at this book, if you stripped out 70 or 80% of the dialogue, you could run the book silent and you would still get it. And I think that it's a really strong kind of argument for, you know, the art being the most important thing in the comic.
Oh, definitely.
Even though, you know, Cook wrote this as well, I believe. So.
Yes, he did.
And I like how strong it is in the storytelling, and yet you still come away slightly befuddled as to what you've been.
Yeah. I mean, I love
Um,
that line. I think there's an image of Robin.
Yeah.
He just shuts it down straight away. I will not discuss this.
Yeah.
And I think that's fascinating, like, because it's almost like every argument of Robin you've ever heard, but it's left unsaid because he just cuts it off with, I will not discuss this. Like, is it you're putting children in danger? We don't know if it's a discussion about a dead Robin, because I don't know if it's before that or after.
I wonder, have you ever heard Dave Mazzucchelli's theories on Robin?
No, I haven't.
And especially on like the early Robin stories and the sort of charges of homosexuality that were kind of leveled against them.
Yeah, I've seen all of those. That's yeah,
right.
The seduction.
But Mazzucchelli's feeling is this: he said, "Look, Bruce's life stops dead at 12.
Yeah,
and he never gets the chance to grow as he should, and therefore, what Robin represents is the kind of the childhood friend that he never had." And that's why he picks teenagers every time, which is kind of an interesting way to look at it. He's living a childhood through them, but also they're combinations of the two ends of that. One is the childhood that he never had, but also it's and you get to be the crime fighting, you know, bat assistant or whatever. I always feel sorry. Go on.
Robins have trauma, like similar trauma to him, or am I misremembering that? Because like Dick Grayson, was he the circus child?
So Dick Grayson was the circus child.
So
the original Jason Todd, the pre-crisis Jason Todd, has exactly the same origin.
Oh, okay.
And I think there's that weird thing in the pre-crisis Jason Todd where Bruce makes him dye his hair the same color as Dick Grayson's, because he's actually blonde.
Yeah. Jason
Todd is supposed to be blonde. And Morrison plays with that beautifully in his Batman and Robin run. Then they retconned Jason Todd's origin.
Okay.
So he gets caught stealing the hubcaps of the Batmobile, and that's how Bruce first meets him.
Okay.
And then Tim Drake is the Robin, the healthy Robin, whose parents are alive up to a point. They slowly, one by one, die as he has further adventures with the Batman. And then Stephanie Brown, who becomes Robin number 4 chronologically.
Yeah.
Her parents, one of her parents is a hardcore criminal.
Okay.
And then there's Carrie Kelly, whose parents are stoners. The future Robin.
Then I guess you've got Damon, who has got abandonment issues from a toxic mother. And
I don't know if I'm correct in saying this. We've moved completely away from this book now, but what the hell? There hasn't been another Robin since. Oh, God, what's his name? Duke. There's Duke. I can't remember his last name.
He's specifically not a Robin and not a Batman replacement, as he becomes his own thing in the sequel. But for all intents and purposes, he's a Robin. But he becomes, like all of them, they become something else, I guess.
But there isn't a Robin number 6. Yeah, I'll be interested to see if in the new Batman series that's starting later this year, I'll be interested to see if they introduce a new Robin. I'd like to see a new Robin.
Well, I mean, if we discount Duke, his name is Duke, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
it's been, get ready to feel old. It's been 20 years since Damien debuted.
Oh yeah, of course, Damien. I'm forgetting Damien.
Yeah. But that was 20 years ago. We haven't had a new Robin for 20 years. I still feel like Damien's a new character.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. I wonder if you can make an argument for the Robins being the kind of id of Bruce Wayne almost, because of their childlike, because they're children. I wonder if you can make an argument with them being the ego and them being the id of Batman. But this is it's kind of it's a seminal work, and it's a great work. I don't know how important it is to the canon. Do you know what I mean? If you just want to take on a ruthless,
I think it's absolutely non-essential.
Yeah,
it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and I think it's more essential to looking at the work of Darwyn Cooke than it is to looking at the character of Batman.
That said, I feel like, obviously, a lot of this book seems to be he's asking the same questions that we and other readers will ask of Batman. All the stuff of you really should be killing the Joker, which you're a big fan of just ending the Joker. But he's asking all the questions and sort of saying, all these questions being presented as Batman's own fears and his own self-doubt, right? So he's not even
and I think he's probably
logical.
Yeah. I mean, again, the no-kill rule is something you bring up every episode because I think there's that one character where it just makes no fucking sense. But as you say, where does he then? You see, you're more of a moderate than I am. I'm you can tell I'm getting old. Because you always kind of bring up that it's a slippery slope, and it is. You're absolutely right. See, I'm a very reactionary person, and this is what this is. It's me being a reactionary person.
But I love that I love that Darwyn Cooke runs headlong into this. He literally has that discussion with himself on, you've got, well, we could call him Paul Batman, because Paul Batman is saying, you got to kill the Joker. There's we got to do it. Like, this is madness. You say we're not killers. You don't want blood on your hand, but we essentially created the Joker, because I think it flashes to the Red Hood incident again.
And what does Hemen Batman think?
And Hemen Batman, well, it's a free play, isn't it? He's very much just, no, I'm not doing it. We're not killers.
No, and I think that is an important thing. I do think the no-kill rule is an important facet of Batman. And I say it just as a point of argument.
No, that's fine.
I'm not one to support a death penalty of any kind. I think it's ridiculous. It's a weird
thing I had with this, though.
Yeah, go on.
Although I do understand the whole, it's a discussion between himself. Possibly he's got disparate personalities for the purpose of this story.
Yeah.
But don't you feel like this felt more like a discussion between Venom and Eddie Brock? Like, videos, more than that. And I think it's mainly because as well, like, this Batman on the screen does become quite monstrous at times.
Yeah.
So it did give me that. I guess another one would be the darkness, that kind of the voice in the head.
It's funny because when I've been reading through this, I kept hearing this voice whenever the Batman figure would speak, and it's just like, I know what that voice is. Where does that voice come from? And of course, it is Tom Hardy's Venom voice. And you hit the nail on the head there. Yeah. That kind of very deeply resonant, animal voice. But you've answered that question for me. Thank you. Like, because I couldn't figure it out.
I find it fascinating because he's like, to go back to the killing thing, he's saying, look, that's the only thing that separates us from them, because as this issue kind of proves, I might be a bit mad as well, like these villains, but the only thing that separates them, I mean, there's more than that, Bruce, but he's, I guess, trying to argue that if I do this, what is the difference between me and my rogues gallery? And ultimately, I want to bring hope to the people of Gotham. Is how I was reading it. But
I think it's interesting because a lot of characters over the years, they've softened and made slightly less dangerous, in particular people like the Riddler.
Yeah.
And I think that happens a lot in terms of giving villains context, and of course then leads to arguments like Thanos was right, and it's just like, no, of course he wasn't. What are you talking about?
Oh, I mean, but that's just movie Thanos, right? Like no one's read no one's read the comic and gone, no, this guy, the Mad Titan, he's my
there's a reason they call him the Mad Titan.
I think it'll be a one sentence sidebar, but I think the biggest issue I have with the direction they went with Thanos is they set him up perfectly at the end of the Avengers when his minion says, but to go against the Avengers would surely be to court death. And Thanos just smiles. And that means nothing to most people unless you read the comic.
Unless you've read.
He's absolutely obsessed with death, like the physical manifestation of death. But they decided, nah, let's not go in that direction. let's make him. They literally climate change argumented Thanos, saying, "Well, let's hear from both sides."
I think though some of that stuff, and it's again, this leads us back into Batman because. And the sort of Nolan versions of Batman, which is some stuff is actually very hard to do in a context that doesn't make it too ludicrous for people. However, when you look at the things that are kind of being done with the new Superman movie, which at the time of recording have not come out yet, but will be out by the time we make this. That seems to very much lean into the more absurd nature of comics.
My wife said, "I don't want to see that," and I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because it's got a cute dog in it, and I know what James Gunn does. He makes me have real emotions about cute animals." I've tried to put her at ease, saying I don't think Crypto will come to any harm in this film.
I think the dog lives in this one. But yeah, I think you have to pick your world, and all those things are happening in different worlds, and I think this is interesting because it takes the very real thing of mental illness, if we want to say that, and puts it up against the lunacy, the kind of, no, not lunacy, the absurd nature of superhero existence. And I quite like that for it. I think it does say stuff, but I wonder if it's saying more stuff about comics than it is about the characters. Do you know?
That's a very good point. More,
but
it's playing with the form as much as it's playing with the character.
And also the problem I do have with this is that I think it's part of the large scale. What I think is a larger scale problem with Batman, a lot of Batman stuff is I remember someone writing on one social media thing. They're saying, I really want to see Batman now, you know, a series of Batman comics that aren't a sort of treatise on Batman's place in the world and in Gotham, and it's just like, yeah, you kind of do just want the repetitious adventures, and I think that's the way.
Those books do exist, right? Like,
yeah, of course they do.
If you only read, I guess, all those different books have got different purposes. Like, there's the ongoing Batman book that just, I don't know, it's very. I don't know what purpose the main Batman book serves, but there are so many great minis constantly being put out that probably,
yeah. I mean, this is the thing. I think that what's happening in comics is given the rise of the trade paperback and the arc and the writers wanting, of course, to make their mark on the character, that has then put you into the thing where everyone's got to be saying their thing about Batman. And I think when sometimes you, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it's a good thing, and it's also a bad thing. But I think that one of the things I do enjoy most are things like Wade and Maury's, you know, World's Finest run, which just seems to be a really good set of adventures. Great. And it's just fun. You know, it's just good comics. I think we want both as readers, and I think you've just the thing is now, I think, for writers and editors, is figuring out maybe, okay, for this year we're going to do just straight up adventure, and then next year we'll make the statement. And then the year after that, we'll do straight up adventure. And then maybe a couple of years down the line, we'll make another statement. So I see where the fatigue comes in of.
But this circles back to our opening gambit in the podcast, no? If you're not enjoying something, just stop.
Just stop.
Like, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but there's 5 Batman books a week being published. It's basically its own publishing house at this point. Yeah. And I guarantee you, if you're not enjoying whoever's writing Batman in this given week, give one of those other ones. Like, Dark Patterns has been my favourite thing I've read Batman-wise this year. Which I've still not read. It's absolutely chef's kiss, and I think it's exactly what you're probably after in terms of. So these aren't adventures; they're just detective stories. This should have been in Detective Comics, but they're doing something else about it at the moment.
I do miss the days when Detective Comics was just Detective Comics, you know.
Because Batman in that just wanders around doing detection. He just happens to be wearing the Batsuit, just ready for crime, and it's you know, they're great adventures.
And again,
but like you say, everyone wants to make, because you know, writers have made their mark. You know, like, I love the Grant Morrison run, and I think he made his mark in very. I really, don't shoot me, but I really like the Tom King run, and I think there was some great stuff in there. And I think, you know, when people do have 30, 50 issues to play with, you know, they're going to go for it, and like, why wouldn't you? You don't go out there to. And I think it must be quite hard when, like we say, there's already been 1,000 Batman comics before you. When you're finally given the book, you're thinking, okay, why am I here? And you want to, you're hoping to make that statement. I think that's where it comes from, isn't it? That you hope in 20 years' time people will be referencing it.
But I wonder if sometimes maybe the approach should be, maybe I'm coming at this wrong, but maybe the approach should be, I'm going to write this as if there's never been a Batman book before.
Yeah.
Or a Superman book before. There's never been.
And I definitely think, having read like these stories that we go through, like, not so much. Actually, no, both of them, these ones today. So with Blades and what have you, they could take place. You know, they clearly sort of take place at the beginning days, but you can literally, you know, you don't have to be telling the continual story of Batman. You can just jump in wherever. He does lend himself to legend and myth and what have you. You can just, right, I'm in Gotham, and let's not worry that someone that isn't Commissioner Gordon is the current commissioner. Let's not worry about that.
Yeah.
If you want your story to be Commissioner Gordon, you go for it.
Yeah. It's a difficult. I don't know where you come down on it now. I think we're kind of very at that point where we need all stories to be all things all the time, and that's not always a good thing.
But I do think they're putting out enough books that you can find that book you want. I think they're getting to a point where they're doing that, and you don't have to read Batman that you're not that interested in, because as we're seeing here, you can go back in time as well. You don't need to be reading the current issue. You could be reading. There's so much with Batman, and you can go backwards and find absolute gold.
Yeah. And you do just need the basics for each story that you approach. Yes, some stories will rely you to know a little bit about continuity, but that's what the internet's for, and that's the pleasure of digging through back issue boxes and finding other stories. And I think a lot of people are always kind of, where do I start? Where do I start? Yeah. Anywhere, really.
Well, I was going to say, never have I ever read a book, not understood something, and then, just looking it up, okay. And then when you go and read those issues, I really didn't need to read those issues. Never have I ever come across something and then gone back and then been satisfied. It's always been, that could have been a wiki stub,
Yeah. Yeah, and back when I was younger, and I'm sure it's not so much the same for a lot of people now, but back when I was younger, you wouldn't start with issue 1. You would just grab whatever issue was there and you would read it, and you would kind of just follow the story along. I mean, obviously it's more difficult with things like X-Men.
Well, I'll tell you, I think the first issue I ever picked up, again, it was from a newsagent on a council estate, and they had, it was one of the 4 Spider-Man books, so Web of Spider-Man or Spectacular, because there was a Spider-Man on the cover, and he had like a blue sleeveless hoodie. It was like, oh, that's cool. And I think it was probably the first issue of the Scarlet Spider or something.
Yeah.
But that was issue 2 of a 4-part thing. And of course, the newsagent doesn't carry parts, doesn't carry amazing web and adjectiveless.
You just used to grab what you
I just had this one issue, and I'm reading through thinking, what? Spider-Man's got a clone? But, I can find that stuff now, but as a kid, I guess that's what we had to deal with. And I explained this to like my 10-year-old nephew, and his mind is blown.
Yeah.
Just comic continuity and things. He just looks at me like I'm lying, because I guess he's coming to it from playing Fortnite or something. And I explained to him, well, no, actually, Darkseid is. Yeah.
I think that. I mean, it's more important just to find things you enjoy, really, in life. I think we're going to have to wrap it up there, because we've done. I said at the beginning of this podcast, we'll do this in about an hour. Oops.
I don't get out much. There's no way you're going to do this in an hour.
No, because sitting here doing this, spending 90 minutes a week doing this. That's why you're not getting out much, mate. Right. Hemen, it has been a bloody pleasure as always. Remember, at the Comic Crush .bsky.social, at the Comic Crush on Insta and Threads, the Comic Crush on Facebook. Do follow the socials for more podcasts and more stuff every week. Do check out the web shop. Comics starting at about £2 in there, and also do check out the Patreon. Again, starts at £2. You can help support this podcast. And the entire Comic Crush website. I'd be very grateful if you could do that.
I can't think of anything that costs £2 anymore. That's a bargain, Paul.
That's the thing. It's cheaper than your daily cup of coffee, unless of course you're having that cup of coffee at home. Right. It's been a bloody pleasure, Hemen. Thank you so much for your time, folks. Do join us next time for another episode. And remember to go straight to the socials and do check out which theme you can choose from.